Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Designing Your Life Live with New York Times #1 best-selling authors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Good afternoon,
Our community has been growing rapidly,
welcome
and it's very
inspiring
to hear from you
live
all over the
New York
world.
Times. One of the big questions that keeps coming up is, how do we go deeper, and can we teach designing your life to people in our communities? Given the rapid response to spreading the good word, we decided to dedicate today's broadcast to answering just that. So please share any questions or comments you have with us in the comments on this live video. We welcome you if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook Live right now. And we will do our best to field any questions you have specifically around the notion of coaching and mentoring and leading discussion groups. We want to keep this dialogue very focused on that, so this video can remain a tool for everyone trying to do that moving forward. So without further ado, the stars of the show today, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. So lovely to have you gentlemen with us as always. It's always great to see you.
It's good to see you, Savannah. Savannah, of course, is our fantastic community manager who's doing all the social media stuff with us and in conversations with these groups that have sprung up all over the world.
Good to be here once again. So shall we jump right in? So the first question, what about, we hear this all the time. Can I teach? Can I certify? Can I coach? Can I do this stuff? Can I help people design their lives with your tools? And the answer is yes, absolutely you can. And the first thing to look at is what materials can you use, and then can you get trained or certified? So on materials, it's really very simple. You've got the book. So the book is self-certified, it is published, it is copyrighted, you can use it any way you want, you can get multiple copies of it, you can hand it out, you can work with it, you can work from it. All the handouts for most of the exercises are at the Designing Your Life website to be downloaded. You can recopy those and reuse those. Go for it. Now, that's really simple. That's thing number one. Thing number two, there's a new piece of material coming your way. We will be online with a video training course sponsored by Creative Live. We're working with them right now, even this afternoon. And we hope by March that we will be up and running with an online video training course from Creative Live. You'll be hearing more about that from Savannah. But once that's up and running, it's in a modular format, and you're perfectly free to coordinate activities using those tools. So you'll have both an online tool set, and you've got the book. And that's really about it. Can you become a certified teacher? No, you don't need to be a certified teacher because it's just so easy. You can facilitate it directly. Bill, so what are we doing for live people?
Well, for live people, first of all, back on all the materials and stuff. So we're academics. We would just prefer and actually kind of insist that you just, when you use our materials, just make sure you quote the copyright and the Designing Your Life logo. So that way we know that the material weren't. In terms of live, we do have, we have in the DO Life Lab, we've got a bunch of really strong fellows, and in fact, our managing director, Kathy Davies, is going to be doing a workshop in the Bay Area here, actually out at the Asilomar Conference Center. And she and another one of our instructors will be teaching a Designing Your Life for Women workshop. So something that we've been piloting, done a couple of times. This is the first time it'll be done sort of commercially in the real world. And then Dave and I love teaching this stuff, so we'll probably do some workshops in the summer. Stay tuned. We'll announce it through the newsletter and through the website when we decide to do something, that other people, other than folks at Stanford, can actually participate in.
That's excellent. Just to be painstakingly clear, what is the most important thing people do when they use content or quote Designing Your Life? Who do they need to give credit to? How do they distribute copyright? What are the little nitty-gritty details there, just so we make sure it's always attributed? Yeah.
I mean, look, it's very simple. Follow the academic protocol. If you are using copyrighted materials, first of all, you can't reproduce the book and sell it yourself. That's against the rules.
You can't say it's your stuff.
You can't say it's your stuff. You can excerpt for fair use, and we've put all of the workshop, the worksheets and things up online, so you can use those. Just when you copy them, make sure you include the copyright, Burnett, Dave Evans, and the Designing Your Life logo. The copyright, is owned by our publisher, Knopf, in conjunction, licensed from us. So that you always have to cite the author and the source, and you can only use the materials, in small bits. You can't reproduce the entire book.
You can't sell them. If you just look at the copyright notice on the worksheets when you download them from the website, that's the same copyright notification you would use. So just copy that one and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Great. Just want to make sure that you get the credit and everyone feels comfortable sharing with us their lovely stories of the exciting events that they're hosting themselves.
Yeah, we really want to encourage as many life design teams and as many book clubs and as many readers as possible. And, we've gotten lots and lots of interest from folks who are in the professional coaching world,
right,
who are certified personal coaches or executive coaches. And they're saying, hey, we want to use some of these materials in our coaching practice. And we're saying, absolutely,
right,
go for it. As long as you, cite the copyrights and make sure people know where the materials came from. Use, Dave and I have always said in the very first lecture we do at Stanford, this is a class that's going to teach you ideas and tools. Use the ideas that work for you, use the tools that work for you. You don't have to use all of them. You can just pick the subset that is actionable in your life. So if you're a life coach or somebody who's doing, counseling in some domain and you want to use some of these tools, we encourage you to use them.
Yeah, the reason we're not certifying people to be a certified coach or a certified trainer is we tried to write this to be simple enough. Set the bar low, clear it, and repeat. That's everything in the book. The ideas are simple. So you just grab the ideas and tools from the book, using the book as the tool, and then you can facilitate that conversation. A small group, one-on-one. If you're coaching, you're an executive coach, you've got 3 clients you want to do some of these tools with, just make sure you buy a copy of the book for each one of those people. They've got all the materials you need. Then you just discuss it. It's really pretty simple. We just did a big seminar for Stanford alumni, 500 people last night, and everybody got a book, so they can all use it. So buy the book for your clients, buy the book for your class, then just facilitate the conversation. We don't think you need to be certified.
I love that. I think the open source collaborative nature of designing your life and the notion of our personal design teams is one of the most beautiful things about this book and movement in general. So I'm glad that you called that out. Thank you. All right, now that we got all the boring legal stuff out of the way and clarified, let's really get into the nitty gritty. You guys have been teaching this for how many years?
Well, we started in 2007 in a class that was called The Designer's Voice, which had a little bit of a, same curriculum and a little different focus, but really, for about the last 10 years almost.
Yeah, and my predecessor class 8 years before that. So we've been working on this for about 17 years.
So it's safe to say you have a little bit of advice when it comes to coaching and teaching these.
We know what not to do.
It's not just that you've written them. There's a lot of method behind this.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Okay, let's get to the specifics. What do you got?
Yeah, so you teach as a team, and there's sometimes even a bigger team than the two of you in these experiences and workshops. Do you recommend doing the same?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. Depending on how we teach this class at Stanford over 10 weeks, and it's 2 hours every Friday. So that's 20 hours of teaching. If you try to do 20 hours of teaching all by yourself, it's just exhausting. So one thing is having a partner makes it easy to hand stuff back and forth. The other thing is we just really like doing this together because it's more fun, when you have someone to work with. And sometimes Dave will observe something that's going on with a student that I don't catch, so we have different maybe empathy, sort of radar. Now that said, we've each done the workshop all by ourselves from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. So it's always a richer experience, I think, if you're team teaching for the students. But it's not necessary. I just think if you were doing this, to start off, it would be good to have a partner to hold you accountable and help you get through the whole thing.
It's easier and harder to teach well together. You really have to know who's doing what now, because you get clumsy in front of your classroom or in front of your training group, that's not going to help them. But if you can work together effectively and you know who's doing what when and the handoffs are clean, then you've got more resources, you've got more energy, you've got more points of view. It's a win-win for you and for the class. But I would be practiced at that.
Yeah.
It's easier to teach alone because you don't have this other person to manage. But if you're practiced at it, it's easier to teach together because you've got help.
And a lot of times, and we just did an event last night, and a bunch of people said, "Oh, you guys have such a great rapport." It's like, look, first of all, we've done this about 500 times. And second of all, if you see the sheet we work from, it divides the class into 10 or 12-minute intervals. It's incredibly precise about what we're doing, what the handoff is, who's next. who's on first, who's on second. So
Say it this way.
And what's the learning objective and how we're going to talk about it and exactly what it is. So although it seems like we're sort of talking extemporaneously, or we're just throwing stuff back and forth, one, that comes after a bunch of hours of doing this, and two, the class and the way we teach each of the individual elements is the most planned class I teach at Stanford. When I teach by myself, I don't have a sheet like that tells me what I'm going to do every 10 minutes.
Okay, that's team. What's our next question? We don't want to bog down here.
I love it. So Annabelle in Laguna Beach asks, do you recommend we teach the book in order? Is this how you teach it in your classroom?
Yeah, yes and no. We don't teach that way in our classroom. We jump around like crazy. But when you're live, you can facilitate those movements. We really mean that it's a toolkit, ideas and tools used in any order. It's not a system where you start and have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then suddenly, boom, your life is designed. It's not that simple. It's more flexible than that. That being said, we worked hard on making the book logical. So, reader's going to start at the beginning and end at the end. She's going to read all by herself. She doesn't have a helper. Let's try to make this thing make sense. So if you taught the book straight through, it makes sense, but you're not bound by that.
Yeah. We find like some people are like in the middle of a job search and they're wondering why they keep sending things out to the internet and they're not getting any answer. And they just go to the chapter on how to not get a job and they go, oh, well, that's what's happening. I'm not being rejected. I'm just using the wrong technique. So if that chapter was useful, then they might go back to the front and said, hey, maybe I ought to build a compass here. Maybe I ought to do the life you work through thing. So yeah, I think if the default is do the book in order. If that's the way you like to read, we laid it out so that it would be logical.
But they say in any mystery, just follow the money. Our teaching pedagogy is follow the energy. So our secret would be, if there's some heat, go for it. So if there's something your class or your group really wants to focus on first, they're really into the balance thing. They're really into the job search thing. They're really into the experimentation thing. Start where the heat is, because the most important thing you can do is grab their attention and get engagement. That's more important than sequence.
Absolutely. I think that's great. You always got to feel the energy of any audience, even when you're on a live show like this one. Speaking of, it seems that one of the hottest questions, both in our Facebook group, thank you very much to everyone who's contributing right now. We actually have nearly 100 live viewers and everyone is super chatty. So fast, the comments are streaming even faster than for me. So keep it up. I will get faster. You keep doing you, everyone out there. Carrie in our Facebook group has been asked to facilitate a 6-week discussion group in her church. Dave, you have some particularly great advice on this, and I think it'd be awesome if you could share that with Carrie and anyone else looking to do a faith-based group.
Sure, Carrie, that's great. And I'm a faith-having person too, so I'm involved in that community. And in fact, I've even written a document called the Christian Companion to Designing Your Life. It turns out, Bill and I worked very, very hard on developing a system that was not merely tolerant of any worldview, but catalytic and supportive. I happen to be a person of faith. Bill happens to be an existential humanist. We come from very different worldviews, very similar work views, by the way, which is why we get to do good partnership. And so we've provided some materials to support that. So if you're actually in the faith-based community, let us know by Facebook. We can get you a document that downloads that sort of tells the backdrop from a Christian point of view, from a church point of view, why these ideas are compatible with your faith experience. But any group that's coming from a values tradition, that's organized around some way of seeing where we're all a bunch of social activists together, we're all a bunch of existentialists together, we're all a bunch of, art appreciators together, you're going to find a way to take that core value and have that be a way that it expresses in how you do designing your life. We built this thing so it's not merely tolerant, but supportive of anything you would come to from a values perspective.
And I think if you'd had a 6-week curriculum, then it might make sense to start everybody out with something like Life View and Work View.
Yeah, the compass is
building their compass, and then doing the quick dashboard assessment of where's everybody at, because that'll give people stuff to start talking about right away. The number one thing all students in any of our classes or workshops tell us is, wow, this was a really cool place to have this conversation. We don't have a place to have a thoughtful conversation about what our lives mean to us, to each other, and to, where we're going. And so just providing that container in these 6 weeks, which should be really transformational for your group. And read Dave's
Awesome.
thing. I haven't written the Existentialist Companion yet, but I think
It's coming.
It's coming.
We hope there are many exciting and interesting companions. Some
Okay.
have been community collaborated on. So looking at these specific groups, because we have a lot of questions from the community that obviously cater to very specific groups of wonderful human beings out there on planet Earth. And Miriam here in our comments asks, I work with middle school and high school teens. Have you ever done workshops with teens?
Let Dave take that. I haven't, but Dave's done a
I've
bit of work.
done some work. I've done some speaking to high school groups, and we closely collaborate with a group called Challenge Success, challengesuccess.org, which is the nonprofit working on changing the way schools do school, led by Denise Pope, one of our colleagues in the Graduate School of Education at Stanford. In fact, a number of the people on our fellowship team have come from that organization. We've sent people back, so we trade staff back and forth all the time. The first place I would go to get good ideas about how to do school differently or work with people in that age category is go to the challengesuccess.org website and see what they've got for you. They're really good at 12 to 18-year-olds. That being said, what can you do? Does this work for teenagers? Absolutely. What's the number one thing you can do? The number one thing you can do is stop sending out dysfunctional beliefs to kids in junior high and senior high. What do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to major in? Which college are you sure you want to go to? Because that's the single most important decision of your entire life. If you don't go to the right school, you'll be ruined. I mean, those ideas, which we inherit freshmen with all the time, are disastrous. How about, what are you curious about? Why don't you give that a try? What are 3 different ways you could live? Just talk to kids the way the book is talking to you. That's the number one thing you need to do. And make sure that people don't get all wrapped up on the wrong problem prematurely. That's the single most freeing thing you can do for a teenager.
So to that, actually, Martin, 52 in Singapore, love how global our community is, thank you all, asks, is there a tipping point in terms of independence, choice, and experience where tracking daily routines and filling out a dashboard becomes worthwhile? And it's okay if you're shooting from the hip here a little bit, since this isn't your
I remember when I started at I wasn't a good athlete in anything until I discovered gymnastics, but gymnasts are highly programmed in how you approach learning skills and things. And so, keeping logs of our workouts and stuff was critical. I think in high school, developing what people call good study habits, which are really just good self-care habits, would be appropriate. Probably younger than that, younger than high school or maybe middle school. It's too early to start thinking about this sort of stuff. But developing a habit of curiosity, developing a habit of looking at problems in new ways, reframing. All the mindsets of a designer. We've got a lot of work going on in the K-12 program at the D School to try to re-energize kids around creativity, because somewhere in middle school and high school, and particularly for young girls, they get the message, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not good at something, and maybe they weren't good at an art class, and so now they don't think they have any creative capacity. And it's just not true. So things like starting to track some of your study habits, athletic habits, also kind of developing some sort of a mindfulness routine at that age would be incredibly valuable.
There really is no age limit here. The point being, we're just saying pay attention. The empathy step of design, right? You want to be empathetic. And the first person you want to be empathetic with is you. Get good at you, then play the game of you to win. That's the deal. Now, I happen to be right now spending 3 days babysitting a couple of my grandkids while my middle son and his wife are off at Disneyland. And Luke, who's 4 years old, I could sit down and we could have a little chat at the end of the day, which is sort of a good time journal. Hey, Luke, we went for a puddle stomping walk out today in the field. How did you like that? What was that like for you? And what about when we were drawing? And then when you're using the blocks to make the big castle? And how'd you feel after you woke up after your nap? And you could literally just sort of chat through with a 4-year-old how his day went, what his engagement levels were. I wouldn't ask him to draw the diagram. And as a parent, you're kind of noticing what's turning my kid on, what's turning my kid off.
Let's elaborate. That's a really outstanding point, and you're hitting right on a big question that a few members of our community have had, but I want to give Sarah, age 47 in Azerbaijan, the credit for this particular question. She's creating a new international business program for her students, and she's curious, and exactly to your point, how do you get new young students to start thinking like designers? And I also think this applies to anyone who hasn't worn the designer hat before, who's going through this process. What's the flip that switches there?
Well, first of all, I am so excited we have a reader in Azerbaijan. I don't know how she got the book, maybe at an airport or something, but that's fantastic. Azerbaijan, Singapore, it's amazing. We just thought maybe a couple people
designing around here global life.
We thought a couple people around here might read the book, and that was it. So one of the things we do when we get, I start with like a group of engineers, and they're not designers at all, and they're very linear thinkers. Or when we start in an executive session, and I've got executives from all these big
or you think like a designer freshman class.
Or the think like a designer freshman class. The first thing we do is actually the stuff that's in a handout up on our resources site on the web called Improvs and Warm-Ups. Because you got to get people sort of loosened up, and you want to create a different kind of energy for learning. Most people, when they come to learning, particularly in a business school or higher ed, they're thinking lecture hall, sit down, be quiet, listen to information, regurgitate. So you want to break that paradigm right away. And what we do is we do these warm-ups. And if you look at the handout, we have low threat warm-ups. We have things that are a little trickier because they're a little more risky. We have things that are just we call stoking exercises. We're just trying to literally get the energy in the room up. So I would try something simple. The one I always try with folks who've never done this before is I call it the massage game, and I just don't tell them it's a massage. I have everybody stand up, face the wall in a conga line, put your hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you. And they don't know what's happening. And then I go, why don't you give that person a nice little shoulder rub? And everybody laughs, and then they do it. And then I say, turn around and do it to the other person. They do it. And the energy in the room goes from, up here to down here, almost, in 5 minutes. And that's what you're trying to do. You try some of the other improvs. You have an alphabet game improv. We've got a game where you try to guess what the other person's thinking. Dave just did one that we sort of call name it or something.
Or not it.
Not it, where you point to something in the room and give it a different name than the thing. I'm pointing to my hat, I call it a car.
I point to Bill's glasses, I go, foot.
Right. And it's surprisingly weird and hard to do, but it gets people into an associative and synthesis sort of way of thinking. So those little icebreakers create a different kind of energy, and then you introduce one of the assignments. Remember, the whole other mindset is bias to action. Our class and most of my design classes that are just straight up design, there's very little lecture. There's lots of interaction. There's lots of questions and back and forth.
Lots
there's
of
lots
doing
of
stuff.
Doing and critiquing. You do something, then we talk about it. You do something, we talk about it. That's how you learn, to think like a designer. I tell my students, like, I can't lecture you on golf and then you go play golf. I got to put a club in your hand, and we got to break the swing down into a bunch of different movements, right? But no matter how much you break it down, that's not a golf swing. A golf swing is this mysterious thing that I can't do, but if you do it right, the ball goes really far. So although we break it into steps, empathy, define, ideate, prototype, test, that's the way we teach it. The way it actually happens in the world is curiosity, bias to action, trying things, making this sort of observational point of view that Dave was talking about, and then moving your projects forward that way.
Awesome. I want to give a quick shout out to our incredibly engaged online community right now. Chad, thank you for giving us a listen to the NPR broadcast in Texas. Dave was just down there giving a fantastic talk. We're happy to have you on our live show here today.
Yeah.
Okay.
We love NPR.
Yeah. Can't emphasize that enough. We saw the Hidden Brain article shared actually in our Facebook discussion group earlier today as well. Big shout out to NPR. From the whole DYL team. Sandra, we're so glad we were able to clear up some of your confusion around whether or not you could share this material and give you the thumbs up that we are trying to make available for people to use. I'm so glad you're happy about that. Staying on this point of kind of, the mystery of how the magic really happens versus the details that make it happen, as teachers are getting prepared to introduce this information, is there anything that they themselves outside of DYL should educate themselves on? For example, Ian asks, is there a design thinking 101 class that I can take or some other resource I should check out?
Well, there actually is. And if you go to the D School's website, I think it's just dschool.org or Stanford/dschool.org.
Just Google Stanford D School.
Stanford D School. There's a thing called the Fast Start deck and a crash course deck. And it really helps actually to understand why the stuff in the book is put together the way it is, to take a basic design thinking workshop. And those are both online. You can do them yourself. You can do them in a team. They have facilitated exercises just like we do. And that's really good because in some cases, if you feel more confident about the design thinking background, then the way it's applied, which is very unique. No one's ever done design thinking for people before this way. You'll just feel more confident that you understand the underlying theory and the pedagogy of how we teach. You know, it's interesting. I always tell people, we sort of teach backwards. We say, let's go build this thing. And then we build it. And then we tell you why you did it. And then we critique it. Normally, people lecture you, and then you try something that you learned. We do it almost backwards. And
we do lab and then lecture. We do practice and then theory.
Yeah. So, once you kind of understand the principle behind that, it's much easier to sort of feel comfortable teaching this.
Awesome.
If someone's sort of thinking about, when am I ready to help other people do this? When am I not just a user? When am I a helper of other users? What I'd recommend is, take it for a walk. Go out, and we talk about prototyping. So we talk about having prototype conversations and prototype experiences. Well, go have a dozen conversations over a cup of coffee. You think you're going to go teach this class? Well, look, you got to know people who are asking life design questions in different situations. So, or even say, I'm asking questions, do your own Odyssey plan to say, hey, can I share it with you? And go have, 4 steins of beer and 6 cups of coffee and, with people one-on-one or 2-on-1, and just have an informal conversation about what's on their mind and test yourself. Can you find the concepts that you read about in the book, and can you bring them organically into the conversation? Can you identify where the efficacy might be? What's going to be a helpful idea? What's going to be a helpful tool? How does this stuff really intersect real lives? If you just went from the book, right, to sort of like curriculum, you start just sort of talking the book out loud, you've never really seen it, in someone's life before. So I'd go take a walk around the block a couple of times with a bunch of people before you get in the front of the room.
There's another question, to teach is to learn twice. So I exactly what I would do. I like take the little energy map diagram exercise, go have coffee with a friend and do it. Do it in the coffee house. It takes about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
See how they think about it and what questions they have. You can drive around all this stuff. Look, we don't ever do a class that we haven't prototyped. I just got a ton of money and resources to prototype a new visual literacy class for all of Stanford. And I said, the first thing we're going to do is eight kids in a room to see what they really need. Because I don't even know if they need visual literacy.
Right.
So, try, set the bar low and try something. I wouldn't try to teach the whole thing, until I had really, was comfortable with all the little elements.
If you're doing something for the very first time in front of 50 people in the front of the room, you're doing it at the wrong time.
We wouldn't do it. I mean, really, we wouldn't do it. We would
and we're really good at it.
Every once in a while. Well, like last time David and I actually taught together, he showed up in class about 5 minutes, like which he tends to do for the prep. And he said, guess what? I've got a whole new exercise. I go, really? I said, yeah. And I just put it in the deck and I don't have time to explain it to you. But when I get to my part, I'll just do it. And I said, well, I'm glad you're comfortable about prototyping.
You actually said, I appreciate the courage you have to fail miserably in front of 100 people. I can't wait to see it.
That's right. And it went okay, but it wasn't that good.
We threw it away.
Yeah, we threw it away.
So it's a great note that you're both human beings, both fallible. Anyone going through the life design process on either side, the teaching or the receiving and prototyping end, should know that failure is always a part of the process. Have a sense of humor about it, like the gentlemen do. And since we're talking about prototyping, Gisela from Brazil, hello to everyone from Brazil. We actually have a very excited Brazilian community right now. We love you all. Thank you for sharing your photos with us.
Yay, Southern Hemisphere. That's great.
Yes. So Gisela asks, how do students prototype throughout the course? And you gave a couple examples of conversations as prototypes, but can you share a few other prototyping formulas for our teachers out there to share with their students? How do they prototype?
The conversation is the obvious one, and that's a very easy thing to get. By the way, let's not skip over that too quickly. It's very easy to get much less out of a conversation than you want. It's easy to think a conversation is fact-finding. Oh, how much do you make doing this? What requirements do I need to get this job? What's it like? Do you travel very much? I mean, that's helpful information, but it's really that's the shallow end of the pool. You don't want to just have a fact-finding visit. You want to have an experiential, tell me the story, walk a mile in your moccasins imaginally, what's it like to be you experience. And that's a much, much deeper conversation. You want to get the narrative, not just the facts. So that's thing one. Then lots of ways to go to experiences. Probably my favorite is come up with some small project, particularly if you're dealing with students. It's very easy to engineer some assignment in some course to have something to do with interacting with people in the outside world. As a reviewer, as a collaborator of some kind. And that's a way for you to start having an experience where you're working with, not just talking about the world you're trying to learn more.
I've got a bunch of students going through this process right now for their big senior thesis class. And last quarter, they did what we call a moccasin walk. Go find somebody you're interested in and just, hang out with them for a couple of days. Two women in the class, ardent feminists, really want to work on female empowerment, decided to pick strippers of all users in the world that they wanted to talk to. And there's about 3 or 4 strip clubs in the valley, and they just started hanging out there and got to know all the strippers. And after a while, the guys who announced the strippers from the front of the room,
you mean exotic dancers,
said, yeah, well, these were strippers. And I said, hey, the girls from Stanford are back, because they became known as the girls from Stanford who want to know about the stripper lifestyle. That was a deep experience prototype. And they came back with amazing stories. And of course, these are not the people you think they are. They're
totally different. Yeah.
Their name really isn't, Bambi and Candy and all that stuff. They're all single moms, by the way, which was the interesting finding. And so, that kind of a, moccasin walk, deep dive into someone else's world where you're not judgmental, you're just observing and trying to see what it is that is going on for them. That's really powerful, particularly if you're thinking about a job change or you're moving from one function to a completely different function. You want to test drive that. We've had students who go over to med school, and hang out with doctors and come back and go, all right, I changed my mind. I never want to be a doctor. Or, wow, this is amazing. Right. Now I really want to be a doctor. So,
for working people, there's an easy technique to do this. It's easy to think, students, go do the shadowing thing, like, take your kid to work day. Right. Gee, I can't do that anymore. I'm 38. Well, here's the deal. A lot of people are thinking about changing their function. Maybe I'm in marketing and I want to go into sales, or I really want to go out there in the field. Or I'm in finance, I want to do this other thing. Could I ever really be an engineer? Could I get it on the development side of the house? So a lot of people are thinking about changing their function. Well, if you already work in a large organization, and many people do, not everybody, but a lot of people do, then there are people doing what you have in mind. And all you have to do is get a little bit clever and think up why what you currently do in the competitive analysis department of the marketing research organization needs to have a conversation with the people doing the treasury function and interfacing with investment banks. And, and it's not that hard to come up with, well, hey, by the way, as we're trying to tell our sales guys what's going on, how does our asset situation look compared to our competition? I'd really like to understand that a little better. Do you mind, Harry, if I came in and, sat in on your staff meeting and we could chat about it later? Or you guys are going on a sales call with these bankers, would it be okay if I came and just rode along? If I rode shotgun, sat in the meeting, took notes, came back and talked to you later on. It's not that hard. You don't always get a yes, but getting a chance to sit in with a tiny little justification for why you deserve to be there, and then somebody who will interpret it for you after the fact, like the backstage tour, is a huge opportunity, and people just don't think about it. It's not that hard.
It gets back to this notion that we're embodied intelligences, and some things we learn by feeling them. To feel them, we have to be in the room, in the experience, with the guys in the suits, and everybody having this conversation, and then we feel, hey, I could do this. This is really interesting.
Or like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here
this
at all.
This is not my culture. So you can't know that just from an information or prototype conversation. You got to go. You got to go try it. But it turns out it's way easier than you think.
Yep.
People will almost always, 70% of the time, people will say, sure, that sounds weird, but if you want to come.
I think that's actually a really nice transition to the next set of questions that we've had, both from Jen live in Facebook right now, as well as from one of our deeper community members who actually decided to ask this question anonymously. How do you keep people motivated? Let's say they get a no asking for a prototyping conversation, or there's time in between a facilitation and a mentoring session and the next one. How do you keep, especially with people balancing work, life, all of this stuff, what are your key tips for keeping the group on track?
I'll start with two off the top of my head. First one is really light accountability. When we start the networking to get referrals, to get to a life design conversation, assignment in our Design Your Life class for Stanford students, we know they won't do it. So because they have to go call strangers, they think, and that feels really upsetting. So we had a hard time.
Older strangers,
Yeah.
like 27.
25.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we kept trying different things. We said, look, how about we try this? Before you leave the classroom, everybody buddies up. You got a buddy. And your assignment is next Tuesday, halfway through the week, get together for a cup of coffee, preferably in person, or frankly, just do it by phone. And you have to ask each other the same question. The question is, how's it going?
And you aren't allowed to leave the classroom until we see it on your
calendar. But the question is just
on your phone.
How's it going? How's it going with making a couple of phone calls? And that's it. Really low threat, one pop. Nobody gets outed. Nobody gets pilloried in public for having blown it. And just that one phone call between two peers who both have the same problem increases activity rates by more than 50%. So if you help people, just check in with, the Jenny Craig weigh-in meeting. Let's just talk to each other about how it's going, not threaten each other. That alone can maintain energy level tremendously. It's a really light touch.
I think you were probably the second thing was follow the energy.
Yeah.
If you're actually curious about something and you really want to meet someone, and let's say that person's just not available, our stats on this are roughly, again, 70% of the time you're going to get a yes. But you might get I just can't. Someone was telling me this the other day. He said, I got 3 yeses, but they can't meet till June, July and August, because I picked interesting people. And guess what? Interesting people are busy. Yeah. So zoom back down, find somebody that's a little more local, find somebody that's maybe not quite so important or busy. But if you are genuinely curious, and that's the thing that's going to pull the whole interview together, that's what's going to make it a deeper conversation than just what do you do in this job.
Right.
If you're genuinely curious, that energy should help you around, occasional roadblocks. Sometimes people say yes. I actually had a student who very nervous, very shy student, and wasn't sure about this whole informational interview, and went out and had 3 good ones, and then was feeling pretty confident, and went and met the vice president of marketing for a major corporation here in Silicon Valley. Got a conversation with this woman, and because she's a nervous person, prepared 20 questions, to ask in 30 minutes. And I said, you won't even get through 5. The woman was stone cold, what do you want? Why are you here? Why are we talking? What are your questions?
What's the point?
Boom, 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 boom. Had 20 questions done in 15 minutes. It was incredibly unpleasant. And my students said, thank you very much for your time. I want to be respectful, of you answered all my questions. And she left, and then burst into tears, in the car on the way home. Sometimes you meet that person. Maybe it was just a bad day for her. Who knows? But it's typically just, if you're curious and you're enthusiastically curious about the thing I do,
right,
you're going to get a good conversation, because interesting people are really interesting. They're curiosity breeds.
The last thing is never single thread. A lot of people, I do this, then this, then this, then this, is project managed. They're single threading their process, and as soon as something sticks, it feels like everything came to a halt. We always want people to have 2 or 3 or 4 things going on at the same time. If that one starts to slow down, focus on this thing over here. Don't have only one thing going on at once.
That's excellent advice, and I think staying motivated is a challenge for anyone facilitating anything, whether that be young students, Encore Gen, all the different groups that we have here. Just a loving reminder to the 70 folks who have been with us since the moment this started live online. If you're enjoying it, or if you're part of a group that you think would benefit from this information, or have potentially your teaching partner who might benefit from this information, please do share this broadcast with them. Obviously, these re-air here on Facebook Live. You can see them. You'll see them on our YouTube channel. But now there's no time like the present, and having the ears of the authors who are, and I work with them, and I can definitely validate that this is true. They are 2 of those interesting people that are hard to get time with. So this time is very special and sacred here. So please do take advantage of it. And I want to actually, speaking of taking advantage of things, there's been quite a few questions, both from Robert and Aesop, on Facebook about, so let's say I don't have the opportunity to facilitate many dialogues. We've talked a lot about going through the whole book and that sort of thing. How do you guys, and I know you do this a lot on the road with your workshops and all the travel we've done with the book launch, how do you decide what DYL presentation will give you the most bang for your buck? And where would you suggest people start when they're thinking about presenting one concept in, say, an hour to 90 minutes?
Yeah. Well, we have two things that we've done. I think we've sort of distilled out of all the other things we might do. One is, well, maybe there's
this is dysfunctional beliefs. Right?
Yeah. You know, if you start with the dysfunctional beliefs, oh, there's only one best me, and if I don't find it, I'm settling. Oh, I'm supposed to know by now, and if I don't know, I'm late. Oh, whatever I majored in college is what I have to do for the rest of my life. I'm stuck. When just talking about things, and you see people in the audience nodding their head. Oh yeah. That's what I thought. You know, I'm 35 and I don't like what I'm doing, but it's too late to change. So once you've relieved people of the notion that those things are true, you get a lot of engagement. And then they're like, okay, well, if that's not true, what can I do? And then we do either things like the energy thing or the
dashboard,
the dashboard, or we do a lot of times we'll do the Odyssey plan even very quickly. Because that gets to the idea that, look, there's more than one of you in there. And there's certainly more than one path forward. And so this is the don't single thread. If I don't get this promotion, then, oh, my life is over. It's like, you might get the promotion, you might quit your job and start another job. You might, a lot of different things you can do. So getting people off this singularity, like there's one best thing, and getting them to just brainstorm and go broadly. And there's a rule of three. Always have 3 ideas, 3 ways forward, 3 informational interviews lined up, that are in different times. That way, you don't get stuck.
The key thing is to get across there isn't one right best answer. We're not looking for the answer and we have to fix it. There are multiple right answers and we're going to explore things. So we got to get out of that engineering brain that believes there's a right answer that I have to get to fast. And I'm in this exploring, developmental, collaborative, creating brain, which is where the designer comes from. If you can get that shift to occur, that's really going to free people up.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Great answer, guys, as usual. And on the same note, there's a few folks here who are considering giving this course as a one-off or potentially more within their existing companies, but they're happy with their jobs. So how can they facilitate this without appearing like it's against their employer? Can we shine a little, put a different lens on the practice here?
We have done some workshops in big organizations. And I won't name either of the two, but in one organization, they were like, yeah, this is fantastic. And you know what? If people decide they don't want to work here, that's awesome.
That's great.
We just want the motivated people. So do your thing and, we'll let it roll. Another organization I went to was maybe a little more old school. When they were specifically requested a Designing Your Life module in this workshop I was doing. And then when I got there, the managing director of the group said, you're not going to teach them anything that'll make them want to quit, are you? And it was more of the sort of theory X, like, I've got them in prison, don't tell them about the outside world. So I think different companies have different cultures. Most people, by the way, don't use this and then change their job.
Yeah.
They don't become, I was the CEO, now I'm the poet. That's not what happens. What happens is they make the job they've got better. They find ways to enrich the experience, not only of their job, but of their life, and find a better balance. So you can teach this stuff. It's not threatening to the employer at all.
If you need a specific technique to do this, if you're looking for sort of the magic words that will calm the VP of HR down, 2 terms that are increasingly important are in talent management are job crafting and job sculpting. So how can we help optimize the talent management retention process by helping you sculpt and craft the role you're in? Or, we'd agree with Martin Seligman, say it's not about finding the perfect job, but the job you can make more perfect. So the job you've got, you can make more perfect. And say, look at one of the techniques we could use to help our employees job craft and job sculpt is look at it through the lens of life design.
Yeah.
People aren't doing career management anymore. They're doing life management. They don't want a career. They want a cool life. Career is a big thing, but they're thinking holistically. So we need to look at this from a values point of view, using the compass. We need to look at it from a lifestyle point of view, from a balance point of view. All those elements come in, and our tools can be used that way. So let's use these life design tools and then look back at how can I optimize where I am and be better at job crafting and job sculpting. And that will at least open the conversation in a less scary way.
Excellent. And I think that's important. We all want to spread the good word, and we don't want anyone getting fired because they just wanted to bring a little life design to the workplace. So that was an important clarification and lens reframe there. Linda, Michelle, and Carrie, all in our Facebook chat, are curious about if you think this can be taught in an online format, online Facebook Live like this, or in another interactive format, or do you think that the physical proximity is imperative to life design methodology?
Well,
we sure hope so.
Yeah, we hope so. We mentioned, or maybe they weren't there. We mentioned at the top of the hour that we are working with a group called Creative Live. They're going to have what's unique about the way they do online curriculum is we actually are going to teach a live session for a day, almost the entire thing that we have. And then what's going to happen is they turn that live session that people can just watch and participate in into an online curriculum. So it's a really super fast way to get the word out to everybody. We do some online stuff in our class as well. The online world, it's like the class is one thing. Then when we went to the book, well, you got to change it so the book makes sense as a book. And I think the online stuff has to be crafted the right way. But I think people can access this stuff, online. It's a lot more fun when you do it in a group. I worry about someone sitting all by themselves, just watching an online episode. But a group could do it, and you could use the Creative Live workshop when it comes out as the sort of backbone for a group. I mean, it'll have to buy the curriculum, but it's not going to be that expensive, and it'd be a way to sort of give you a ladder, a scaffold through the whole program, and it would be taught, essentially by us. So you could do it that way.
There's sort of 4 clicks between remote and in person. So there's remote, I'm doing it all by myself, just me and my screen, and I'm doing that. So that's the most remote. We wouldn't be too thrilled about that because some interactivity is going to be helpful. Then there's I'm remote, but other people are too, and we're interacting with each other in non-real time online. We don't see or touch each other. Maybe it's a video chat. That's pretty good. Then something we're seeing people have a lot of success with is online, module development or curriculum capture, followed by then offline. I have a local group. We actually are watching it together in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of us. We chat about some stuff for a while. We kind of go back. The Creative Live people expect a lot of people will take this online course together in a live group. So I have a local experience with an online facilitation, and then all the way down to it's a live in-person training experience. But what we are finding is when people get a face-to-face conversation about some of these tools and these elements, they find it very helpful. It's easier to hear yourself while you're talking live with somebody else. So if you can get that, it's pretty handy.
Yeah, I think just speaking for me totally personally in my experience with the community and also as a life designer personally, I think it's wherever you feel safest and like you can get most vulnerable, because a lot of the dialogue, if you really want to address your wicked problem or your community wants to address their wicked problem, requires some very honest self-evaluation and really starting where you are. And wherever that place is that you feel great or the people that you're trying to serve feel most safe, I think is where you should facilitate. That's what we've seen work here. Just a quick shout out to our community. And if you're curious about getting more involved, we have communities, actually dozens around the globe of folks who already meet in person. We also have a very engaged private, outside of our just brand Facebook page, discussion group that is a curated and very safe place for discussing things, for exploring this, for having ideas. And if it appears it would be beneficial, I'm more than happy to create a separate group just for coaches if you want to have dialogues about this topic specifically and not worry about anybody else chiming in on that. So just FYI, please do consider that. One training I do think we haven't touched on that might be interesting. We have a lot of teachers and folks who work at schools. Hello, Linda, I'm talking to you right now. Do you offer, or are you gonna offer training for teachers and academics who wanna formally teach designing your life as a part of their curriculum?
Well, it's a little bit of a long answer, but the one thing, if people were asking, hey, could we get some design thinking training? The D School runs programs all summer to take people from schools who want to do, design initiative or some kind of creativity or makerspace in their middle school, high school, whatever. We bring teachers and administrators in at a very low cost, just to run the programs. And so hundreds and hundreds.
K through 12 program at the D School.
So check that out. In terms of designing your life, again, we're not going to be out sort of certifying people. However, we have a lot of requests from higher ed right now, and that's what we're working on. So this in June, we'll be running our first transfer workshops where we'll have people from 10 universities, kind of all over the country coming in and learning the curriculum, give them all the slides and send them on their way and help them design a version that works for them at Harvard or MIT or Mills or wherever they are from. So we're going to try to support higher ed as much as we can. And we've got some people working in the community college system, so we could connect you with them for at least storytelling and how they're doing it. And then high schools and middle schools, it's a big request. We're just not there yet. We just don't have a way to support that yet. But I think, again, as we said at the beginning, if you've got the book and you've got all the worksheets and you've maybe taken one of the online classes, you should be able to put together a high school version of this. The exact same structure and things are the things are the same. Obviously, a high schooler's work-life balance has more to do with maybe sports, homework, and dating than it does with kids and the job. But the questions still work, and we just have to figure out what's the scale that you're talking about with these kids. So Savannah would, I think, if we could put together a group for coaches, we could certainly put together a group for high school teachers who are trying to do this, and you could self-facilitate curriculum, and we'll certainly comment on stuff as we see it if we think we can help make it better.
But let's be really clear. If you're a junior high teacher, you're a senior high teacher, and you're hoping maybe just going to be some teenage-tuned, DYL for teenagers or DYL for senior hires, that's not coming anytime soon. So you need to, if you want to tune it for the localization process, go for it.
And know that we welcome that kind of dialogue and discussion in the community. You can absolutely send anything to us. Designing Your Life, the book at gmail.com is the best generic email address to get us. And I check it every day. We look at this. We're all about empowering you to continue spreading life design methodology. So keep that in mind.
In some way, if teachers got together and they started doing this and there was an effective intervention, and for high school kids, let's just take that for a second, that'd be a great learning lab for us. I mean, if there is a second book, it might be Designing Your Life for kids or for teenagers or something like that. So having an active community of people prototyping experiences for these students, seeing what works, that's the way we would do it. I mean, if we started this tomorrow, we'd say, let's start with 10 kids in a local high school and try all these workshops, and then they'd all fail for some reason because we didn't.
We're hearing. I work with recently released prisoners. I work with PTSD suffering veterans. I work with some constituencies of people where some life design can be useful, and people just grabbing the book and going for it, and that's great.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. There's some, and Shauna brings this particular question up, but there's been quite a few questions about design team versus if we're in a large group, we get a bunch of information. So two questions here about design team. Is a spouse or a parent a good sounding board, or are these people too close potentially to perpetuate your and maybe contributing to dysfunctional beliefs? And also kind of regarding size, does everyone in a let's say a group of 25 belong on a design team, or should that be broken out into groups of say 5 from what you've seen in the class?
Well, I mean, I'd go back to the way we teach the class. There may be 60 or 70 people in the room, but they're in small groups of 6 or no larger than 9, because you just can't have. You talk about a safe place.
Too many conversations.
A safe place to have a conversation. And I know what you said last week, and we're building on this sense of each other. It's got to be certainly smaller than 10. So if you had 25 people, I break into 5 groups of 5. And then you could do some things across the groups, but at least that little core group would be kind of my core team, and everybody else would be support.
We generally find that those work well when they don't know each other. At the Stanford, you are not in the same group as your girlfriend or as your frat mate. Even when we do these short exercises in these 90-minute mini workshops or these alumni events, we encourage people not to break into the 3-person small group discussions with their partner or their spouse. It's not a rule, just because you want to hear other conversations. But the key thing is, if get the conversation you can. Let's say you don't have access to anybody. You've got one friend who's not going to do life design, but is willing to have a beer with you every 2 weeks and kind of hear how it's going. Fine, that's a lot better than just talking to yourself. Yeah. So the perfect situation is we've got 6 people. We're all doing it together. That'd be lovely, and then you increment from there as best as circumstances allow.
what we have heard, and I think this is something we're probably going to follow up on, is when couples are doing, let's say, the Odyssey plan, they do it separately. Yeah, I have my 3 ideas, crazy ideas of what my life's going to be, and my spouse has 3 crazy ideas. You do it separately so that you are free to just come up with whatever you want, and even stuff maybe you've never told her before that you want. Then when you bring them together and you have the conversation and you have it's not like judging each other's plans or anything. You're just saying, wow, tell me more. That's so interesting. I didn't know you were interested in becoming, a massage therapist or a Reiki, therapy, giver. Or I didn't know you wanted to, join the circus. Whatever it is, that conversation can sort of increase the connection. I wouldn't probably do it together side by side.
Yeah,
saying, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this idea? That wouldn't work.
If you think, we've actually had a lot of couples come back and talk to us about how they've done it together effectively. And this particularly really highlights that the Odyssey planning exercise is ideation on its way to prototype experimentation, which is on its way to some trial and error before you get to commit. Let's say I do 3 plans, my wife does 3 plans, and only 2 of them are common. So we've got 5 different plans. Oh my God, how do we pick between the 5? We have to choose. No, you don't have to choose. You have to identify elements in these 5 plans that might be of interest to go explore together. Well, maybe before I decide I hate the idea of moving to New York, we go explore that together a little bit, and I leave my judgment aside. It gives people a safe on-ramp to differences that could turn into collaborations rather than negotiations. We don't negotiate, we collaborate. It's really different, So this depends a lot, of course, on who is that parent, who is that spouse, who is that partner. But just make sure you keep that designer mindset, and then you're going to be okay.
But one quick caveat: you can't design someone else's life.
Yeah,
we have a lot of parents who
here's your plan, Bill.
We have a lot of parents who show up and say, "I'm not here for me, but I want my daughter to get her act together." And we're like, what'll happen is Dave will distract the dad, and I'll take the daughter aside and say, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, and it'll only work if it's something that's for you, because that's not a safe place, right? For the daughter to do anything. So you can't design somebody else's life. They didn't sign up for the seminar. You can't do it for them.
And you can't use it as a Trojan horse to secretly design it either. And
because he wasn't he was interested in what he wanted her to be.
But you can give them the book. Just buy them the book and see if it works. If it doesn't work, give it to them again.
Yeah. I've had that experience personally, and then when they finally open it, they're like, "This is why you wanted me to read it. Oh my God, my life is different now." It's like, fancy that. Jen, I hope that also addressed your question about groups. I am really trying to hit all the questions. I want to say we will have to wrap this up relatively soon. If you're watching live, please re-ask your question if I have not addressed it. We've had dozens and dozens and dozens of comments on this post, and it's really, really, really exciting. So I want to make sure that I didn't miss anyone. And I'd love to give you a shout out too, if you just want to tell us where you're at right now, what country you're in, what city you're in, what the weather's like. That's fun for us too. We've got a super international community. And while everyone's doing that, I love this question from Ryan because it's very sweet. And I actually think it is applicable because we've personally had quite a few dialogues about how to continue to scale and grow the Designing Your Life movement. It's actually, we call it a movement on our Facebook page. So Ryan asks, were you surprised by the level of response you received to the book? And has this reshaped your goals surrounding it?
Yeah. Yes, we are astonished by
it. Really, it's
and incredibly grateful and really happy, but totally astonished.
Yeah.
From the day one when we said, well, let's write a book, and then we wrote a
And I said, no, let's not, because nobody wants to read another book.
Right. And then we found this amazing agent who happens to live
around the corner
from Dave, and he got
the Dalai Lama,
and he got this incredible publisher for us. Along the way, everybody said this isn't gonna happen, and this isn't gonna happen, and this isn't, and your publisher's gonna suck, and it's not gonna work, and nobody's gonna care. And everything that's happened has been the exact opposite. We've had nothing but amazing people working with us and supporting us, and so we're totally grateful and astonished. And it has changed what we think we can do because the book's impact, and now it's live in Holland and Germany, and It'll be coming out in Portuguese for our friends in Brazil.
We're coming up on our 8th printing. We've only been out for 5 months, and that just doesn't normally happen, certainly in our category. So we've been very honored by people thinking we can be of some help. Does it change our goals? Well, my goal is to just sort of stay on the horse right now, and we'll see how that happens after we get around the first year. I think it's fair to say, at least for me anyway, that the decision to do the Creative Live video training project online was really influenced by this. We originally, we're stand-up teachers. We're used to teaching live in the classroom. The Stanford students were kind of like people in 3D, so our bias was leaning toward the stand-up training model. But that scales really slowly. And so we met these people who we thought could do a good job with us online and said, if we can get that out, we can get out faster, we can get a lot more people, more help more quickly. That's probably the right decision to make. So I would say the reception is certainly affecting our conversation.
Yeah.
We're spending more time on Facebook than we thought.
Our goal was to get these ideas and tools to people to see if it was useful. And when people call me up or they send me an email or something, and they're happy with the book, I replied that I'm very grateful and that I'm glad it's useful. Right. There's a lot of self-help books and other books out there that they're just you read them and then you think, I can't really do this, or I tried it for a little while and I must be a failure. And so if people are actually making this useful for themselves, and if they're finding a way to apply even one or two of the design principles, to something, and they threw a better birthday party, or they were more empathetic when listening to a friend, it's a good thing, right? We're making the campsite better than we found it. So that's all we were trying to do.
We do not want to be the diet you can't stick to.
I love that. Or the diet that makes you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
To me, that was one of the big standouts. Yeah, when I read the first proof a couple years ago now of DYL and saw where you guys were going with this, I was so touched that there wasn't anything wrong with me. That the notion was that I could just start wherever I was. And I think that's really different in its approach. And I do think, just as a community manager who's worked with a lot of different people besides you guys, one of the most striking things about this entire group of readers and all of you watching right now is just how engaged you are and how much more information you want from Bill and Dave. I love it. I love that I'm constantly asking them to do these videos and to answer your questions, and you're firing them at us. Don't ever stop. That is one of the best things. Quick shout out. So this is how global this community is. And if you're sitting there listening right now and you're thinking, I don't know if I should sign up for the community because I doubt there's anyone in my area, don't think that. Let me just erase that. Let me reframe that dysfunctional belief. Right now, speaking of, it's super hot in Sydney. I think we're all a little jealous up here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's not super hot. It's raining in LA, just like it is here in much of the rest of California. It's a lovely 84 degrees in Gilbert, Arizona. That sounds perfect. We have 2 folks from Romania with us, and we actually got some of those questions. Robert, thank you for asking all of those excellent questions throughout this dialogue. We've got some folks in the New England snowstorm, Allison in Boston. Hello, we're happy to have you bringing that to local women's groups, and do please keep an eye on. We will have a designingyour.life/women page coming up, in addition to the /resources page that we currently have, where all the worksheets are that we just talked about, and a very women specific program that we mentioned earlier, just in case anyone now listening missed that in the beginning. We've got Quito, Ecuador. We've got Monterrey, Mexico. I saw actually in Ecuador, there was a group that got together for the first time and started talking about this just a few days, maybe yesterday actually. And that's just so exciting. What's up to Charlotte, North Carolina? We send love from the other coast over here. And let's see. Okay, a couple final questions. Okay. In the classroom or with your groups, do you have students do exercises in class or in the room, or do they take it home as homework?
Yes.
Yeah, both. But we do a lot of exercises in the room and a lot of dialogue in the group of 6 or 8.
Right.
Often there's an exercise, then you do something, and then you debrief it in a pair or a triad, and then we have a report out from the front of the room. So again, if you think about a classroom and you're thinking seats in rows like a lecture hall, it's nothing like that. There's 8 or 10 pods of people sitting around desks talking, and Bill and Dave roaming around all the time. So yeah, with a lot of stuff in the classroom, some stuff you have to reflect on. So you take it home, you write it, you bring it back. But a lot of activity in the classroom, very little lecture.
Nice. This is, thank you, Bruce, for that question. That was actually great. I think it's important people understand where the work and where the life design work really happens. Two wonderful.
We teach this, normally at Stanford, 2 hours a week for 10 weeks, 20 hours. We also teach it for the grad group as an intensive 5-day, 4 hours a day, 20-hour thing in 1 week. So there's the 10-week version and the 1-week version. We notice the feedback in terms of impact, life impact is about the same. And in that long gestation period, there are some real advantages that come with a long time. And in that short intensive, there are some real advantages and they're quite different. But as long as people bring sincerity, the compromise of, I can't do that 3-week project on Tuesday night during the intense thing, that trade-off versus I had a long time to think about it. It has worked both ways. So there's something about this that's pretty flexible. And just make sure you're trying to do the right thing at the right time with the situation that you're in. So back to your question.
Oh no, that's great. I was actually really just going to give a little praise because we've talked internally about this, and I think you'll just like to hear it as kind of a close. A number of their group members have said the book is different from all career counseling books, including the old standby, "What color is your parachute?" Something we talk a lot about in this group is being the new one, being next gen, and it's very nice to hear that comparison. So thank you, Jen, and thank you, Jen, also for being so engaged this entire conversation. Jenny, little sweetheart here, said she started a life coaching business and she called it Your Life Design Coach. In her head, she had the vision of people being able to design the life they love, and then you came out with your book. She's so amazed at the serendipity and incredibly grateful, which is lovely. Okay, yes, and the Stanford alumni workshops are all 90 minutes, correct? There's a couple folks asking about those specifically.
Right.
Cool. Okay, well, so for everyone watching this lovely broadcast, I'm going to post all of the links to everything that we just talked about, the resources, the ability to sign up for a newsletter. I'll also post the link to the private Facebook discussion group if you're not yet a part of that and seeing this on our brand page. If there's anything else you all would like, we'll also do the Christian Companion as well. If there's anything else that you need, please do let me know here now in the comments. Remember that sharing is caring when it comes to all of this, and the only reason we can be here is because you, the community, convinced me to bribe Bill and Dave for their time and to have the lovely production of Enlightened Audiovisual, with whom this would also not be possible. Rob Hicks, you're the man. We love making these happen and making them beautiful, having evergreen content that our community can use to empower others with the Designing Your Life methodology is so important to each and every one of us here. I've personally never been so enthusiastic about a project that wasn't my baby before as I am this one. So thank you for sharing your stories with me. I'm the one who reads them first, and allowing Bill and Dave to continue following their passion and building this community and movement. It's a real gift for all of us. As a closing challenge, because this is one of my favorites, and I think Bill has heard me say this in class before when I have the privilege of coming to Stanford. If you were to give our coaches and our teachers and our mentors out there right now a closing nugget, perhaps a one-sentence bit of motivation, or if you really want to take on my classic student challenge, the 140 characters or less, what would you say to them as inspiration in carrying forward the DYL message?
I'll go with follow the energy. Your own and the people you're coaching.
I say curate the curiosity. I mean, not just be curious, get really good at being curious, and frankly, almost everything else will take care of itself.
Yeah. The answer is in the people you're working with. They have their answer. You just facilitate them finding it.
You don't need to be diagnosed. You just need to be let go.
I was just about to compliment you guys for being succinct, and then you kept going there, so I'm good. So in a soundbite, follow the energy, curate the curiosity. I think those are two incredible nuggets from the best-selling authors. Bill, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time. The community around the world, clearly now you can see from the live comments, it's not just me emailing you every week to tell you that they're awesome and they're really there. They are actually there doing these wonderful things. So thank you all. We look forward to joining everyone for our next live broadcast. The goal is to do these on Fridays, every other Friday. So if you want to go ahead and block it off in your calendar so you make sure that you have the time. I want to give a shout out to someone who actually has already taken a vacation day to be able to watch the creative live class when it's streamed live. I will also post that link as well in the comments. As always, you can learn more about Designing Your Life at designingyour.life. The resources are at designingyourlife/resources, and you can find us on Twitter at DYourLife. And Bill and Dave are also on there. I'll share the Twitter handles if you want to give them a little love on that platform. We're obviously here and very engaged on Facebook, and I am Savannah Peterson with Savvy Millennial. I am at Savvy. If you ever want to say anything in particular to me or want to secretly relay a message to the guys that you might be embarrassed to say on live Facebook, which I totally understand as well. One more time, thank you to Enlightened, Audiovisual, best-selling authors, #1 New York Times. So proud every day of Designing Your Life. Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Savannah Peterson.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Savannah. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.